The alien child stared through the reinforced glass, but it was no child. 7 years old by Earth standards, yes, but there was something about the stillness in her eyes that made even Commander Sithrak Sikitna's armor feel too thin. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, didn't even blink. Just sat cross-legged in the observation cell and met his gaze, like she'd seen monsters before and he hadn't measured up. Sithrak turned away from the glass with a flick of his mandibular crest. What is her designation? Subject 17, said the science officer, tapping notes into a data slate. Unremarkable genetics, no enhancements, behavioral aberrations noted since day 1. Explain. She speaks in broken Vulkar. Began copying our language within hours of abduction. Organized the others into sleeping rotations, nutritional sharing, even basic escape drills using shadows to avoid camera lines. We've isolated her 3 times, no change in behavior. Non-compliant, defiant. Sithrak hissed low and thought. She's 7. She should be broken. They all should. But none of them are. The Velkar Dominion prided itself on the Harvest Protocol. Over 24 species had been subjugated or dismantled through careful, precise genetic acquisition. First contact with Earth had been standard procedure. Observe, assess, and then abduct prime juvenile specimens for analysis and exploitation. The humans, for all their loud broadcasts and combustion engines, were judged primitive, emotional, fragmented. Sithrak had overseen the harvest personally, selecting 300 human children from various corners of the blue-green world, chosen based on physical potential, neuroplasticity, and geographic anonymity. They were here now alive, contained, and catalogued. And yet, he returned his gaze to the girl. She was drawing on the floor with a piece of metallic debris she'd hidden from the last sweep. A map, perhaps. Or a language. What are they doing? Now, he asked. The science officer hesitated. They've stopped speaking out loud entirely. Now they only use gestures or eye movement. We don't know what they're saying. Have the behavioral coders. They've tried. One started having night tremors and requested reassignment. The others, they say it's like watching something become intelligent while pretending not to be. It's unsettling. Sithrak's eyes narrowed. Run a full genomic scan on 17. Deep read, every base pair. I want to know if we missed anything. A silent alarm pulsed red across the chamber ceiling. The lights dimmed as a security drone whispered past. Another escape attempt? No, this was internal Sector 4, the Hydro Reclamation Vault. That was supposed to be secure. A voice chimed in his implant. Commander, containment breach. Minor, 2 guards down. Perpetrator, a child. Which one? Subject 32, 8 years Earth standard, male. How did he escape? A long pause. He melted the door lock. Used a power conduit rerouted through the hydration basin. He left a message on the wall, in blood. Sithrak closed his eyes for a moment longer than necessary. What does it say? The voice hesitated again. He said you took the wrong generation. The room felt colder suddenly. Sithrak tapped into the broader Dominion communication net, scanning for incoming threat indicators, but Earth was silent. No fleets, no transmissions. Just the usual scatter of orbital traffic and regional unrest. The humans hadn't even realized their children were gone yet. Or had they? He opened a secondary feed, one the general staff didn't access often. Cultural assessment logs. Global human sentiment tracking. Normally just noise. But now he looked closer. A single phrase was trending across multiple languages. Find our children. Accompanied by imagery, rage, organization, and something else. Not panic, not despair. Purpose. He gestured for the feed to shut off. Pull surveillance from the youngest batch. Full review. I want everything they've said or done from the moment we took them. The science officer nodded, already pulling files. As the holograms flickered to life, 100 small faces stared into the void. Some crying, most quiet, but their eyes, they were watching. Calculating, learning. 1, barely 6, had begun assembling small bits of alien tech into something resembling a radio transmitter. Another had scratched Morse code into her cot. Subject 17, the girl with the steel gaze, had left a pattern of handprints on the wall of her cell, red against gray. 5 fingers, then 4, then 3, a countdown. Sithrak straightened, a sharp tension rising under his exoskeletal plates. How long until the next scheduled medical extraction? 2 rotations. We begin with neural slicing. He studied the images again, those eyes, those impossibly calm children, and the growing, crawling sensation in the base of his neural core told him they had missed something critical, something vast. Humans weren't underdeveloped. They were undeclared, and this wasn't a harvest. It was a provocation. Sithrak tapped his claw against the control panel, summoning a star chart of Earth. It glowed blue and beautiful in the center of the projection. Send a request to the Dominion Council, he said quietly. About what? Authorization to terminate the program. The science officer looked up in disbelief. Commander? If we are wrong, Sithrak said, watching Earth spin slowly in the display, then we have not harvested a resource. We have awakened a predator. The silence in the Velkar High Command Chamber was absolute, the kind that bred tension not from noise, but from the absence of it. Commander Sithrak stood before the projection sphere, claws twitching as he reviewed another internal incident. Report this time from Medical Bay 12, Subject 81, had removed her own biomonitor with a fragment of synthetic tray. No screaming, no flinching. Then she used the blood to jam the motion sensors and attempted escape through the vent systems. She had made it within 3 corridors of a shuttle pad before being intercepted. It had taken 4 armed guards to bring her down without lethal force. She was 6. The science staff called it statistical anomalies. The security staff called it a pattern. Sithrak knew what it really was, a signal. Not to the other children, but to them. Earth. Are we certain there's been no trace reaction from the human governments? Sithrak demanded. Confirmed, replied his adjutant. No formal broadcasts. No fleet mobilizations, no response. But there were cracks. Forming, tiny ones. Too precise to ignore. A Velkar forward listening post near Saturn's orbit had gone dark. At first, it was dismissed as a system failure, until engineers recovered a single image from the black box, an unknown human ship of a design not registered in any known catalog, angular, silent, not built for comfort, built for war. And then there was the signal, intercepted 3 cycles ago. It had come from deep within a disused asteroid mine near Jupiter. It was low-band, analog ancient tech. But the message, once translated, was crystal clear. You stole from the wrong planet. Since then, surveillance data had grown strange, not in what it showed, but in what it didn't. Human satellite systems were subtly adjusting orbit paths. Civilian traffic to low orbit was being delayed without explanation. Public media remained quiet, but encrypted traffic between Earth's major defense networks had spiked in the last 30 hours. The humans weren't ignorant. They were preparing. Sithrak paced slowly. Are they mobilizing a counterfleet? Not in the traditional sense, his tactical advisor replied. No mass displacement. No command pings from their military satellites. Then what are they doing? Training simulations. On a planetary scale. Civilian-based, but cross-linked with military servers. And there's a global uptick in recruitment among all major powers, especially among a generation identified as the parents of the abducted. The chamber darkened as the projection shifted to Earth's surface. Dots lit up across continents, flashing, pulsing. At first glance, they looked like random signals, But then a pattern emerged. Are those military installations? No, Commander. Those are schools. The room went silent again. On screen, children were gathering in small training groups. Older siblings, cousins, even teachers were stepping in, drilling them in coordination, endurance, strategy. Volunteers, millions of them. No government had ordered it. No law enforced it. This was not protocol. This was personal. And that was what unsettled Sithrak more than anything. The humans weren't reacting like a species defending territory. They were reacting like a family whose blood had been spilled. "Bring me Subject 17, he said. "Commander, she's under neurological quarantine. She's the only one who looks at me like she's waiting for something." "I want to know what." Within the hour, they brought her in. She stood between two armored guards, hands free, no restraints. The guards insisted she didn't need them, that she followed them willingly, that she told them where to walk. Sithrak looked down at her. She stood straight, chin up, eyes sharp. Not a flicker of fear. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lena." "That's not your designation," she shrugged. "It's what my father calls me. He'll be here soon." Sithrak flinched inwardly. "You believe he'll find you?" "He won't need to find me," she said, voice calm, deliberate. "You made sure of that when you took us." He studied her. "Do you know why we took you?" "Yes," she said. "You think you're better than us, and are we not?" She tilted her head, watching him with the clinical patience of someone studying a lab animal that hadn't realized it was in a cage. "You think because we cry, we're weak. Because we laugh, we're soft. Because we're small, we're slow. You saw the worst in us and mistook it for the whole. Emotion clouds judgment. No, emotion fuels ours." Sithrak tried to suppress a chill. "You are children." Her stare turned cold. "And yet here you are, nervous, watching us, afraid." He slammed a clawed hand onto the table. "You should be afraid. We are the Velkar Dominion. You will be dissected, decoded, and rewritten. Your world will not survive." She blinked slowly. "Then why are you sweating?" He looked down at his palm, damp. Lena turned to leave. The guards didn't stop her. She paused at the door. "You're watching Earth," she said. "But you're looking in the wrong places." "What do you mean?" "You're watching the sky." "But the wolves are already inside your walls." Then she walked out. Sithrak stared after her, the words sinking in with the weight of prophecy. He turned to the projections again. This wasn't just defiance. It was a countdown. And somewhere, in the cold of space, humanity had already started moving. The Dominion fleet's outer patrol ship, Vraxian Echo, was supposed to be untouchable. Cloaked with triple-layer quantum shielding, armed with distortion cannons, and stationed deep beyond the Urt cloud, it monitored the human homeworld for any sign of advanced tech deployment. Its destruction was not just unexpected, it was impossible. And yet, the transmission had arrived 15 minutes ago. Static-laced, frantic, and abruptly cut off. A single word screamed across the comms before blackout. "Run!" Commander Sithrak stood frozen as the playback looped again. How did this happen? That ship had no known coordinates. No trace signature. The sensor officer, frantically tapping at his console, replied with strained calm. "We're combing the system, Commander, but the debris field indicates deliberate targeting, not an accident." There were no warning signs, no approach vector, no detectable propulsion. The kill shot came from a dead zone. Sithrak's claws clenched tight. A stealth vessel? Not one of ours. And not like anything we've seen from them before. Then how did they do it? That question was answered moments later by a child. Subject 32. The same boy who had melted through a containment door days ago had been discovered attempting to splice into the Dominion's internal navgrid using a homemade interface rig. Not even the guards had understood what he was doing until he triggered an internal systems loop, that fried all surveillance in his sector for over an hour. And in his cell? A single phrase, carved into the wall with sharpened metal. We learned. From the best. It was no longer theory. Humans had found them, and they weren't sending diplomats. They were sending students. The playback from the Vraxian Echo's last moments was enhanced frame by frame. The analysts finally caught a silhouette barely visible against the dark void. It wasn't sleek like Velkar warcraft. It was angular, bristling, ugly in a way that said function before form. And most disturbing of all, it bore no national markings. No flags, no insignia. Just a single human phrase scrawled in blocky white paint across its hull. This is for the children. Sithrek's breath caught in his throat. These weren't state-sanctioned attacks. This wasn't a formal war. This was vengeance. They're not coordinating through governments, he muttered aloud. They've bypassed traditional chains of command. We're not dealing with military response. Then who? Asked the science officer. Sithrek turned slowly, realization dawning like a sun over a battlefield. Parents, soldiers, veterans, scientists. Anyone with a child taken or anyone with a conscience. Earth has billions of them, and now they've found each other. The science officer scoffed, too nervous to hide it. But how? The Velkar Dominion has the most advanced data blockades in the quadrant. We jammed their signals. We cut their comm lines. We erased the abductions from every media server on the planet. They didn't need servers, Sithrek said grimly. They needed each other. And they had something even more dangerous than technology. Memory. The officer frowned. They couldn't build ships fast enough, even if they didn't build them, Sithrek cut in. They reclaimed them. Every wrecked satellite, every dead probe, every old Cold War relic. They patched them, rewired them, painted them black and filled them with people willing to die to get their children back. A new alert pinged at the edge of the command bridge. Unidentified vessel entering orbit, the tactical officer called out. One of ours reprogrammed transponder. It's broadcasting a message, visual. The screen flickered to life. There, hovering in low orbit above the Dominion base above them, was a ship no larger than a cargo hauler. Covered in crude armor, visibly jury-rigged from scrap and station parts. It looked like it shouldn't even be flying, but it was. And from a mounted speaker, a voice rang out, human, clear, controlled. To the Velkar Dominion. You stole 300 of our children. You failed to understand what that meant. Now we are coming, not as diplomats, not as soldiers, but as mothers, as fathers. And we will burn this sky to get them back. Silence followed. Then the ship without firing a shot zipped away too fast for intercept. Sithrek didn't speak. He didn't need to. The room understood. They had misjudged humanity entirely. What they had believed to be a disorganized, primitive race of emotional mammals had just demonstrated the most dangerous kind of intelligence. Distributed, vengeful, and united by love. Not national borders. Not political systems. Not even shared culture. Just one singular, horrifying motive, protect the young. And now the galaxy would bleed for it. Commander, said the tactical officer hesitantly, should we begin fallback procedures? Sithrek's voice was low, shaken. No, we hold, not because we can win, but because we need to understand how we lost. Because somewhere in their labs, behind containment fields and scanners, 300 small humans waited, and every one of them carried in their blood. Not fear, but fire. It began in the dark. At 0300 station cycle. All Dominion internal lights dimmed for scheduled power recalibration. A routine window, exactly 27 seconds long, never breached. Never exploited. Until now. At second 13, power failed entirely. Not a flicker, a void. And in that pitch black, 73 Dominion personnel went missing. No alarms, no screams. No signs of struggle. Gone.s. YTH single quotes Rack stood at the center of the command deck, watching surveillance footage frame by frame. Every camera had failed, every sensor glitched. But a single frame remained, just one, probably corrupted. Probably a fluke, but he watched it 100 times anyway. It showed a figure. Not large, not armored, just human, wrapped in black cloth. Bare feet, eyes glowing faintly under a dark visor. In one hand, a curved blade. In the other, nothing. The timestamp labeled it 3 hours 0 minutes and 14 seconds. The next frame? Empty hallway. Got the next after that? Static. They were here, Sithrak whispered. Impossible, the technician muttered. We control all points of ingress. No human ship breached our perimeter. We watched. Then you weren't watching closely enough. Across the base, the children had stopped speaking entirely. Not just to each other. Not even in their signs or codes. They were waiting. And every one of them was smiling. Lena, Subject 17, had traced a new symbol into her cell wall. A human letter, crude and harsh. V. When asked what it meant, she replied, "It's the letter they write before the violence begins." Meanwhile, chaos spread through the Dominion fleet. More ships were going dark, silent, not destroyed but emptied. Entire crews vanished. Others found bound and unconscious, stripped of weapons and comms, with nothing but a simple note pinned to their command chairs: "Give them back." The Dominion tried to respond, consolidating ships, increasing security, rerouting patrols. But each countermeasure was anticipated, intercepted, dismantled. And humiliating. 1. Heavy cruiser Zenith Talon was lured into a decoy trap near Neptune's orbit by what appeared to be a disabled Earth vessel, a junk freighter. No threat until the moment its engines roared to life and it launched 5 nuclear decoys disguised as escape pods. The Talon had time to shoot down 3. The other 2 weren't bombs. They were boarding pods filled with exosuit-clad humans using magnetized claws, pulse cutters, and stun grenades. They never fired a shot at the Velkar. They took the children and left. The Dominion had deployed centuries of military supremacy to its subjugation protocols, disrupt communications, neutralize resistance, shatter morale. It had worked on every other species, but humans weren't resisting. They were attacking, and they were doing it with horrifying efficiency. "They've cracked our cipher," said the lead communications officer, her mandibles shaking. "They're not just intercepting, they're redirecting our fleets." We lost contact with the Ashgal dreadnought. Its last reported location was in orbit over Earth. "Any footage?" A nod. The main screen flickered to life. A grainy feed from the dreadnought's final transmission. A human boy stood on the command bridge, barefoot, dirt-smudged, no older than 10. Behind him, Velkar officers lay unconscious. No blood, no weapons in sight. The boy looked straight into the lens and said, "My name is Malek. I'm 11. I used to play with LEGOs and watch cartoons. You took my little sister. I'm taking your fleet." Then the screen cut to black. Sithrak's breathing grew shallow. His voice, when it came, was thin and quiet. "They've turned our own tactics against us." "No," said a voice behind him. "They've improved them." It was High Strategist Valtir, old and clawed, summoned from deep cryo-analysis to consult in worst-case scenarios. "This is beyond military doctrine," Valtir rasped. "We planned for ships, weapons, states." He gestured to the cascading list of losses on the screen. "But these aren't nations attacking us. This is not war as we understand it. This is revenge, personal, precise, and patient." He paused. "They are not just fighting for territory. They are fighting for the future of their species." Sithrak stared. "Their children." Valtir shook his head slowly. "No, we took their children. And what we failed to grasp is that for humans, A threat to the young is not an act of war. He leaned in close. It's an extinction-level provocation. Outside the command deck, the lights flickered again. A symbol pulsed across the Dominion control network. It had bypassed their FIREWLL. It appeared in every lab. Every screen, every data pad. V. Not a signature, not a threat. A promise. And beneath it a single human phrase. You taught us fear. Now we return the lesson. Sithrek turned to his staff. Scramble every remaining escort ship. Lock down all labs. Triple security on the containment rings. Commander. Someone said, voice shaking. We've already done that. Sithrek narrowed his eyes. Then why do I still feel like they're already here? Because deep in his bones he knew the truth. This wasn't escalation. This was dismantling. Not of their ships, of their entire way of war. The first sign came with silence. Not the kind born from power loss or signal disruption, but a deeper, more primal hush. Dominion warships drifting through Saturn's rings ceased all communications at once. Not a word, not a ping. As if the void itself had swallowed them. At first, command assumed destruction. But then came a return ping from the Verthail Lance, one of their heaviest cruisers. Except the voice that answered wasn't VLK single quotes AR. It was human. Your ship is fine. Your crew is not harmed. We've returned them to your moon base stripped, confused, unharmed. We didn't want them. We want our kids. Stop delaying. Sithrek watched the transmission in dead silence. The bridge was full, yet no one dared speak, because now they knew. Humans weren't just striking from the shadows. They were inside. The Dominion fleet, boarding at will, extracting with surgical precision. And now they were giving ships back, not out of mercy, out of confidence. They're not hiding anymore, Valtir muttered, claws twitching. They're broadcasting their presence. Do you understand what that means? They want us to see them, Sithrek replied, his voice dark with realization. They want us to understand that we are no longer hunters. The roles had reversed. Dominion. AI scrambled to calculate risk vectors. Estimated human fleet size, unknown. Infiltration count, unknowable. Projected morale collapse in 6 cycles, 87%. And still it got worse. At 0400 hours. Dominion engineers attempted a manual reboot of Station Core 9, the primary AI nexus managing power and containment systems. Upon activation, every screen lit up with a flickering human face, young, freckled, smiling. The eye interface had been overwritten. The child's voice spoke in calm, robotic cadence. Hello, my name is Nora. I'm 7 years old. I was learning Python on my mom's laptop before you took me. Now I've taught your central control network how to play hide and seek. The lights dimmed, doors sealed. Systems reset into lockdown. And then, without warning, all containment fields dropped. The cells opened. Every single one. Not just the 300 abducted human children, but the thousands of species the Dominion had taken from 100 other worlds. Some had gone mad in isolation. Others wept as they stepped into the light for the first time in years. It was not chaos. It was release. And the children, especially the humans, knew exactly where to go. Some ran, some fought, but most simply walked. And waited, because they had already been told. Stay calm. Stay quiet. We're coming. On the bridge, Sithrek received one last warning. A direct message routed through the Dominion's oldest diplomatic frequency, one so old it hadn't been monitored in decades, and yet it rang. An open hail. To the Velkar commander. The voice said, deep and deliberate, you have mistaken our silence for weakness, our emotion for frailty. What you failed to understand is that every human child carries the memory of our worst days and the potential for our greatest wrath. You abducted our children. You thought we would panic, but you forgot what happens when a human loses their Child, you didn't start a war. You started a hunt. The screen changed again, not text. Not faces, images, photos. Thousands of parents, of siblings, of friends holding missing posters. Crowds gathered at vigils. Soldiers standing at makeshift altars. Scientists in war bunkers. Hackers coding in basements. Mechanics welding weapons to old shuttles, grieving, fighting, becoming something else. All united by one idea: bring them home. Valtier finally spoke. We have to retreat, now, abandon the labs. Destroy the genetic archives if needed. If they reach the core, they've already reached it. A technician interrupted. Everyone turned. The primary data hub was flashing red. Internal comms confirmed. Human infiltration. No casualties, no resistance. They'd simply walked in. It began with a sound no Dominion ship had ever heard. Drums, real drums, percussion echoing across the vacuum of space. Not by physics, but through raw, calculated transmission. Low frequency, bone-rattling beats fed through the audio channels of every Dominion vessel, overriding standard comms. A heartbeat that wasn't theirs. A rhythm that pulsed like a war cry, primal and human. Then came the lights. Thousands of them. At first, they looked like debris fields, old Earth junk, satellites, corroded space probes. But the patterns were too precise, too intentional. Glowing blue thrusters flicked on in synchronized formations across Neptune orbit. More lit up from beyond Pluto, rising from forgotten research stations buried in ice. A fleet. Not built in some gleaming military complex. This was humanity's scrap, reforged, retrofitted, ugly, scarred, furious. And every ship bore the same white phrase across their hulls: for the taken. Dominion command scrambled. Sithrock barked orders through the chaos. All assault craft to intercept. Deploy void scythes and engage the outer ring. Do not let them form a blockade. He stopped mid-sentence, because the humans weren't forming a blockade. They weren't playing defense. They were coming straight for the flagship. 10 of them broke off and dove into full burn. Not from behind, not from blind angles, straight at the front of the Dominion fleet. Shields raised, engines screaming like banshees. Each moved like it wanted to die, like it expected to. One Dominion cruiser fired a direct hit. The lead human vessel exploded, but not before releasing its payload. Not nukes, not lasers. Something far more dangerous: koan pods. Magnetized, shielded drop pods that struck like meteorites against the Dominion hulls. Latched, drilled, and opened. Out poured the humans. Not soldiers in full Dominion spec armor, but a swarm of mismatched gear, scavenged suits, power armor patched with duct tape, boots etched with names. Inside each, veterans, hackers, rogues, trained parents, and yes, even older children, every one of them with the same objective: bring them home. Dominion. Decks lit with red as internal systems blared intrusion warnings. Troops flooded to choke points, but the humans didn't care about choke points. They created their own routes, cutting through bulkheads, hacking floor panels, disabling gravity in sections, and gliding through corridors like WRAITHS. In lab sector 4, a Dominion general attempted to evacuate a control node only to find his escape blocked by a single woman with a plasma torch and a bleeding shoulder. She didn't flinch. She smiled. You had my son. She threw the torch. It wasn't lit. The child behind her was. He stood holding a Dominion disruptor he'd pulled from a guard 5 minutes earlier. He didn't hesitate. One shot. One flash. One general down. Every deck recorded stories like that. A grandfather exosuit walker ripping open cryo-containment. A mother overriding an entire surveillance grid from her repurposed med scanner. A 13-year-old girl whispering Dominion encryption back to them in reverse, taught by her brother before he was taken. No unit fought alone. No one broke formation. The humans didn't. Operate like a formal army. They operated like a pack. They communicated without words. They moved with vengeance. Sithrak watched in disbelief as one of his finest dreadnoughts, the Varkun blade, was disabled from within by a group of 5 human infiltrators. 5, not trained Marines. Not elite commandos. 5 civilians. All parents. Their children had been in N holding block C. And the blade had denied their release. So they took it apart from the inside. And then came the signal. A surge of human war code echoed through Dominion. Space, bouncing between stolen satellites and relays long thought dead. On every human vessel, a single command blinked green. All found. Burn the rest. The strike changed. Precision gave way to destruction. The humans had retrieved their children. Now they were cleaning up. Orbital cannons fired without hesitation. EMP charges detonated in Dominion fuel lines. Entire wings of the fleet began to collapse. In coordinated arcs, cut off, isolated, and hunted. The human ships circled like wolves. And the Dominion? They broke. One command ship tried to flee. It was hit with an old American shuttle, retrofitted with 40 tons of mining explosives. No targeting AI, just manual input and a grandmother at the controls, tears in her eyes, singing a lullaby. She hit them dead center. There was no escape pod. Another Velka destroyer ejected, all its crew in surrender. The humans let them live. Barely. And the flagship? Sithrak could only watch as the outer hull breached from the inside. A child-led rescue team had sabotaged the engine core. The alarm screamed. His officers ran. And in those final seconds, standing on his collapsing bridge, Sithrak saw the last thing he ever would. A human child. No, older than 12, standing calmly in the doorway. Behind her, darkness and fire. Around her, others. Stepping forward, she said only one thing. You should have asked what we were before you stole. Who we loved. Then the flagship exploded. The wreckage drifted for weeks. Once mighty Dominion warships, now husks, orbited the edges of the Sol system in silent humiliation. Glowing like tombstones in the black, their twisted metal told no lies. This had not been a battle. It had been a purge. In the aftermath, Earth stood untouched, unconquered, more importantly undivided. For the first time in history, humanity had moved as one, not out of politics, not out of fear, but for blood-deep, child-driven purpose. Now the galaxy watched. And it was afraid. The Dominion survivors, once conquerors of countless systems, limped home in scorched fragments, dragging behind them the weight of failure and the screams of a million war songs they did not understand. They would never speak of Earth as a low-tier species again. The term primitive had vanished from their lexicon. Instead, they whispered the new name, the burned sky. Because where the humans came, the stars seemed to darken. Not by weapon will. The Vulkar High Council convened in panic. Their shattered fleet returned not with victory, but with warnings scrawled into ship walls in human script. Some were brief. This was mercy. Others more poetic. We are kind until you take our young. Then we are something else. And some were just names. Names of the children. A roll call of vengeance. Sithrak's final log recovered from a drifting fragment of the flagship was played across 300 systems as a cautionary tale. In it, the former commander appeared gaunt, his once proud voice hollowed by dread. We misjudged them, he said. We thought humans were scattered, weak, emotional. They are. And that is why they are terrifying. Their grief is a blade, sharper than any weapon. Their unity, when forged in sorrow, is unstoppable. And their children are taught to fight with purpose, not hate. We did not start a war. We unleashed a legend. In the quiet weeks after the conflict, rescue ships from neutral worlds arrived to aid recovery. They found no wreckage near Earth's orbit, no spoils, Nothing of value left behind, except one station, still powered, still orbiting steadily over Earth. On its hull was painted a human phrase, looping over and over in glowing letters, "Don't touch our kids." Inside, the rescued children had drawn on the walls, in chalk, in paint, in blood. Some said the drawings weren't savage. They were. Stories. One panel showed a child hugging a soldier. Another, a mother holding her daughter's hand at a burning. Console. One showed Earth surrounded by rings of fire, standing alone untouched in the center. Above that picture, a caption, "You came for us. We came for you." On Earth, the recovery was swift. The children, many hardened by trauma, returned to families forever changed, governments disarmed and rearmed in strange rhythm. The people who had watched war unfold in real time through hacked streams and uncensored feeds began to live with a new understanding of who they were. They had seen what they were capable of, and what the rest of the galaxy now feared. Mothers and fathers, those who had fought, hacked, sabotaged, and bled for their young, were no longer ordinary. They were veterans of the void, and their stories spread. In orbit, a small museum formed on the remains of the Vulcar's main holding vessel. It was called the Silence Breaks. No entrance fee, no propaganda, only testimony. Audio recordings of children, diaries of soldiers who'd never seen combat until the moment it mattered most, the final messages of rescue teams who didn't make it back. In one corner of the museum was a single unmarked object, a child's shoe, scorched at the sole, burned nearly through. Beneath it, a plaque, "We found this on the Dominion Bridge. The enemy never touched our planet, but they touched this, and so they lost everything." The message was clear. It didn't matter how many guns the galaxy pointed at Earth. Humanity wouldn't start wars, but they would finish them. Brutally. Efficiently. Permanently. In council chambers across the stars, species revised their first contact protocols. A new clause was added to galactic law. Human child abduction or experimentation is considered a war crime under threat of planetary retaliation. Some still questioned it, until they heard the new human anthem echoing across the systems. Translated in thousands of dialects, "We are the fire in the void. We are the storm beneath still skies. You took what we love. Now remember our name." And they did, because even now, in the shadows of peace, Dominion scouts report seeing strange flashes in their periphery, glowing eyes, whispers in ancient Earth code, that same haunting letter scratched into their steel, V. Not for victory, but for vengeance. Or perhaps for a message older than war. "We told you, never touch our children."